Hi, we're the Price family. Are arguments in your marriage depleting you? If so, this video's for you. So a lot of people think that having arguments in your marriage is a bad thing. A lot of people think that if you're arguing with your wife or with your husband, then that means your marriage is starting to fall apart, and before you know it, you can be going to divorce court. Well, that's not really the case. Ann and I personally believe, after many years of being, pastors and counselors, we really believe that arguments sometimes and conflicts, it actually brings intimacy to a marriage, but only if you fight fair. So we really haven't had an opportunity to have a really big argument, but we have had moments where we had a conflict and we had to resolve it, and we're gonna kind of role play that for you guys later, so you can kind of see how we handled it being people with counseling degrees and kind of understanding conflict resolution. But just to kind of give you a little bit of a setup, before we talk about what we did to resolve the conflict, I want to tell you a little bit of the story. So basically, I grew up as, one of four. My mom cooked most of our meals, and the big thing we were always told growing up is you do not talk about how you don't enjoy the food. So this is basically the dynamic. We had this uncommunicated expectation between the two of us about eating. So for instance, one time I made a salad and I left big chunky tomatoes. And Anna started eating the tomatoes and was like, I can't do big tomatoes. And I was like, but I made you big tomatoes, so don't tell me you can't eat big tomatoes. I'm fix this food. So Anna's like, okay, cool. So she tries eating it, and then before you know it, she gets so green, she starts to run to the restroom and actually throws up. And I'm like, why'd you throw up? And she's like, I can't eat big tomatoes. But we kept having these little conflicts over food that were very small and kind of easily ignored, until one time Anna was giving me feedback on how salty food was, and I just snapped. I was like, you are the most ungrateful person because I cook dinner, and when I cook dinner, you don't like how it tastes, so half the time you go eat something else, and so you have no respect for me and the effort I'm putting into this family. That's how I felt. Now, luckily, because we, have had a lot of really great training in conflict resolution and understanding uncommunicated expectations, we had an opportunity to fight fair. And so if you're having arguments like this in your marriage where little things tend to blow up into bigger things and you have uncommunicated expectations, we're gonna go over a few different steps and then we're gonna show you how they work out. So step number one.
So the first step you were to take if you're doing a healthy approach to your conflict is to speak up. Tell them, this is what you do and this is how it makes me feel. And when you speak up, the other person in step two gets to what?
They have to repeat back. So what should happen is the person should say, hey, because you did this, it made me feel this way. And the other person should say, I'm sorry I made you feel this way from doing this. That way they know, okay, they heard what I'm saying and they're not just trying to think of a counter argument to throw back.
So the third step after you speak up and the person repeats back is to be prepared for your spouse to also share their concern or share their hurts. So be prepared to give and take and accept what they're saying because they've heard you, they've repeated that back, and they may share at some way in this conflict that you've offended them. So be prepared not to just lash out in that moment and actually understand and hear what they're saying. Create measurable goals. Sit down together and say, okay, if the way you make this tomato is offensive or it actually makes me sick, let's make a measurable goal. So if you would like to put tomatoes on my salad, then cut them up really small or don't put them on my salad.
As a more legitimate example, for instance, if you're sitting there and you're like, man, I don't feel like you help me out around the house. I feel like the house, I'm doing all by myself. Well, then maybe you guys say, okay, look, if you'll at least wash the dishes this many times a week and do the laundry this many times a week, that would show me that you hear me.
So the fifth and final step to take is to affirm your partner when they have done what you've communicated to them. So if I've communicated, hey John, I'd love for you to take the trash out for me at least a couple times a week. I feel like I'm always having to lug the trash out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which really he already does take the trash out, so this is just an example.
But I let it pile at least like
yeah, you
double
know,
the size of the
so
trash.
this is actually a good example. John, would you mind actually taking the trash out when it gets full? And then he does do that for me, at least if I've measured the goal out to be, you know, 3 times a week. Could you take the trash out when it fills up to the top the first time? And he actually does those things. I'm gonna say, hey, I really appreciate that you've been doing that for me. It means a lot to me, and now we're closer together and we're more intimate. I love you for it.
All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna role play that argument to the best of our knowledge. Some parts of the story might be overly dramatized just for the sake of entertainment and for the sake of me being dramatic.
What's new?
Same. All right. Anna, I just want to let you know that my masculinity is so fragile right now. Whenever you gave me feedback about the food being so salty, it hurt my feelings because I felt like you weren't respecting the time and effort that I was putting into feeding our family.
I'm really sorry that I made you feel that way. I'm trying to apologize.
I'm sorry. Okay, cool. You can do this.
Stop. I'm really sorry if I offended you. I was just trying to like make you a better cook and make you like grow and learn more in your cooking. But when you put too much salt in my food, it makes me blow up like a balloon. That offends me.
All right, so here's the thing. If you will let me know, so when I tell you, hey, I'm gonna make this, if you'll just let me know ahead of time, which you can't eat, then that'd be super helpful. But if you don't tell me, hey, I can't eat this, yada, 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 then just pick it off, whatever, and you can still eat it and I won't be offended. But wait like at least an hour before you tell me that you didn't like about the food. Would you mind doing that?
I don't mind doing that.
All right, I love you.
I love you.
So obviously that was a silly retelling of an actual conversation or conflict that we had. And so as silly as that is, we do want to kind of take it back to a serious place in saying that every marriage and relationship, it's all at a different place. And for some of you guys, you may have been fighting for so long that the idea of bringing up something is just kind of exhausting, you know? Or maybe you fought wrong for so long, you're sitting here thinking, man, even if I bring up my uncommunicated expectation, I don't know if my spouse is even going to receive it. Well, thing is if you choose not to bring up a conflict, you're basically kind of giving up at a chance to have a more intimate relationship. And you might need to have your spouse or somebody else watch this movie first, you know, so that you both are on the same page. But if you're just kind of like, I don't know where to start, well, we do have a starting point that we hope you'll actually find very useful. You're gonna see it down below in the comments as a picture. Feel free to just print that picture off and Anna will kind of talk to you more about what it is.
So we've created for you guys an uncommunicated expectations letter to your spouse. So that's just basically a tool, like if you're, man, I'm just like going through this cycle, we're just constantly fighting and you don't know where to start, but you know you've got to do something. This is a great place to start. So it's basically just a letter that kind of gets the conversation started. And if you're afraid to bring up an uncommunicated expectation, maybe it's been uncommunicated for too long and you are just like, man, I don't even know if they would receive it at this point. Go through this letter. There'll be blanks at different spots for you to fill out to kind of tailor it to fit what you're going through. And it starts out by just communicating to your spouse the things you love about them most. And just focusing on the positive things in your marriage, focusing on why you married them in the first place. And then it continues on to say, because I love you so much, then I want to bring up something that has hurt me or has kind of created this conflict in our marriage. And it gives you a space to explain that in any way that you need to do that.
You know, depending on, you know, where you're at in your marriage and how much conflict there has been, you know, nothing's going to be solved in probably one letter. It's probably going to be multiple letters. And if after a couple letters you're like, man, we just really have a lot to work through, don't be ashamed of getting actual professional counseling. And the reason being is, counseling is not there to tell you what all of your problems are. Counseling is there to help you get unstuck and to kind of go down the path that leads to a more fulfilling relationship with each other. The good news is, and here's the important thing to remember, if you give your spouse a letter and they give you a letter back, that doesn't mean that they're not listening to you. What it actually means is that they still want to work things out with you. When you see relationships stop trying to voice concerns and receive and give, and everything seems to break down and people go to their own little silos and they stop talking, that's when you know that somebody has given up. But when people still continue to come back to work out their differences, regardless of how messy it looks, well, it means that both people are still in it, for the long haul. And that's always a wonderful and beautiful thing.
So we really appreciate you watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends and your family, and follow along with us on this millennial adventure.